So South Africa's stance on illegal immigration is starting to reach a boiling point. Today we're unpacking the finance minister's call to rethink the constitution, what MultiChoice's new owners are plotting for DSTV's future, and Washington's move to put South Africa on its trafficking watch list. Plus, in the Wildcard, the curious story around why we call traffic lights robots. My friends, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss the stories that matter. And now, with all that out the way, let's get into it. So across Europe and the US, one of the most visible political shifts has been this hardening stance on illegal immigration. I mean, you can see it in the headlines, election campaigns, and border crackdowns. The debate isn't just about numbers, it's about how these stretched public services can cope when populations grow faster than budgets. South Africa has had its own version of that battle, and this week our finance minister put it rather bluntly. You see, our constitution says that the country belongs to all who live in it, a clause that he now calls a grave mistake. He told mayors that metros can't afford to keep providing free healthcare to undocumented migrants, warning that limited resources are continuously being diverted away from the citizens. For example, some hospitals in Gauteng, which are already under strain, are treating foreign nationals who in some cases are receiving housing and services before South Africans who are still waiting in these backyard dwellings. The finance minister insists that this isn't about xenophobia, but rather about sustainability. You see, he's pushing for stricter immigration controls, even floating the idea of mandatory visitor insurance like he saw in Zanzibar. In the end, his message is pretty clear. Enter legally and cover your costs, because South Africa can't afford to keep footing the bill for everyone. So last week we unpacked Canal Plus's 55 billion rand takeover of MultiChoice. This week the French media giant has laid out its playbook, and it's not shy. You see, the new CEO of Canal Plus Africa says that the goal is to reach half of all the households in South Africa and across the continent, promising to do whatever it takes to get there. So the strategy here is to go big on content. Canal Plus already produces 4,000 hours of African programming each year in more than 20 languages, while MultiChoice adds another 6,000. Now together that's 10,000 hours annually, and they're aiming to build a library of up to 100 to 150,000 hours over the next decade or so. And furthermore, they're also promising more global hits too. You see, Canal Plus already controls a vast European and American catalog of more than 9,000 films, now bundled with DStv staples like SuperSport. But now the streaming fight isn't exactly settled. You see, Showmax, once hailed by MultiChoice as a Netflix rival, is bleeding cash, losing nearly 5 billion rand last year. Now, Canal Plus is reviewing whether to keep all three platforms alive, being Showmax, DStv Now, and its own, or to collapse them into one. Either way though, the primary goal here is simple but daunting. Scale up fast enough to survive in a market where gigantic competitors like Netflix and Disney Plus are already dominating. The US has just moved South Africa onto its human trafficking watch list, a step that could escalate its sanctions if progress isn't shown. You see, the annual Trafficking in Persons report released in Washington this week placed South Africa on the Tier 2 watch list, citing insufficient efforts to combat forced labor and sex trafficking. Now, for South Africa, the report acknowledged some progress, like launching the first sub-provincial task team and securing more convictions. But it did flag worrying declines. Fewer victims identified, fewer cases investigated, and fewer prosecutions compared to previous years. Now, if that pattern continues, South Africa risks being downgraded to Tier 3, where sanctions could include restrictions on foreign aid and opposition to loans from institutions like the IMF. Now, all of this comes against a rather tense backdrop. You see, President Trump has already cut humanitarian aid to South Africa, imposed tariffs, and has accused the country of persecuting its white minority. So, with Congress currently weighing bills to review our trade ties, this watch list adds another layer of pressure on our government. And before we cruise on to our Bagel Bite of the day, here's a couple other headlines worth knowing. For starters, EFF leader Julius Malema could face up to 15 years in prison if found guilty of unlawfully discharging a firearm at a 2018 rally. A guilty verdict would also disqualify him from serving in parliament. Bafana's World Cup hopes took a major blow after FIFA docked 3 points for fielding a suspended midfielder. Now, as a result, Lesotho was awarded a 3-0 win, leaving South Africa tied with Benin and Nigeria breathing down their necks. And government plans to register every drone sold in South Africa on a new electronic system with possible levies and tracking devices for commercial models. Industry experts say the register is long overdue to ensure accountability. And on to our Bagel Bite of the day. Let's see what you got. The question is, who wrote The Wealth of Nations, often considered the foundation of modern economics? Was it A, David Hume, B, Adam Smith, or C, Karl Marx? Bonus points if you know in which year it was published. And on to our wildcard section. Ask a South African for directions and you'll most certainly hear turn left at the robot. Look, it baffles visitors, but the nickname is older than you think. You see, when traffic lights first appeared in Johannesburg and Durban in the late 1920s, they replaced police officers who stood at the intersections directing cars by hand. So according to local authorities, the machines were quickly dubbed robot policemen, a nod to the fact that the job was once done by a person was now being performed automatically. Over time, the name stuck and robot became shorthand. But that's not the only theory. Some point out that in 1920s England, traffic signals were also briefly named robots before the term faded there, possibly drifting south with colonial influence and surviving only in our variety of English. Either way, whichever version you believe, the result is the same. South Africa preserved a piece of quirky linguistic history. And today, robots is as much a part of our language as bucky or circles, for that matter. And as for that Bagel Bite, the answer was Adam Smith, the Scottish philosopher whose 1776 book, The Wealth of Nations, is often called the birth certificate of modern economics. Published in the very same year that the United States declared independence, it argued that free markets and self-interest could drive prosperity better than kings or parliaments ever could. And my friends, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in until the very end. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this one as much as we enjoyed putting it together. Hope you guys all have a great day, be kind to one another, and we'll catch you all same time tomorrow. God bless.